Hello everyone, it's Dylan from Yu-Gi-Oh! Everything, and welcome back to another Yu-Gi-Oh! Go Rush episode review. This time we will be reviewing episode 42 of Yu-Gi-Oh! Go Rush, the duel between Shubaha and Yuhi. And a record has been broken in terms of the most attack points we have ever seen any Rush Duel monster reach, and it's fitting that it would be in the form of Buster Blader, an absolutely awesome and iconic OG Yu-Gi-Oh! Monster. Before we get to the video, I would like to thank today's video sponsor, and that is Skillshare. I am super excited to be working with Skillshare again. For those of you that don't know, Skillshare is an online learning community where anyone can discover or take any class that they'd like. I've taken a few different classes myself, whether it's time management, video marketing, video editing. There are a lot of different classes that have interested me, and one in particular that I thought was really cool was 21 Days of Purposeful Productivity by Mike D. This class really nailed down how important habits are and why it's such a good thing for creators and for people in general to form healthy habits. The class was so inspiring that I've even downloaded a habit tracking app to make sure that I stay on top of my video editing, video scripting, and so much more. I know how tiring it can be to work the traditional 9 to 5, and Skillshare really allows you to design a career that's fit for you. No goal is too small, and I know that thinking about our future can be intimidating, but take the pressure off by starting small, and Skillshare teachers will help us by taking us through the process step by step. The first 1,000 people to use the link will get a 1-month free trial of Skillshare, so click that link in the description and get started today. You will not regret it. So generally speaking, what did I think about the episode? I actually really liked it. I think for an early arc episode, this is one of my favorites of Yu-Gi-Oh! Go Rush. It's certainly my favorite of the 4th arc here. We imagine the final arc of Season 1, and I liked it really a lot more than I thought. Going into this episode with, Shubaha sounding similar to Chewbacca, we even got very early on Yugioh saying, far away. I think he said that at some point. I can't remember the context. I think it was in regards to Velgears, in relation to where they currently are located in the universe. I was expecting this to be a very heavy Star Wars reference episode, and maybe not too much more than that, but it actually really exceeded my expectations. Shubaha was a character that I really enjoyed, and I feel like these characters are always hit or miss, like the Ashita Glot character last arc. I did not really like at all. Thought it was a waste of an episode. And Yuhi is a character that probably is my least favorite between Yuumu and Yugioh, so knowing he was dueling in this episode, and I don't dislike Yuhi, I think he's got a crazy amount of room to grow, but knowing he was the dueling character and his duels can sometimes be a little more comedic based, made me think that, alright, this wasn't really going to be anything of substance, really, but I was wrong. It was actually a really good episode, in my opinion, carried by Shubaha and Yuhi, and a bit of a twist that we get here, learning that Yuumu and Yuhi actually swapped decks. So we knew that Yuhi lost to Kawaitel off-screen really before the events of Go Rush started, and we know that Kawaitel was the one who extracted the Earth Damar from Yuhi to really get this whole show, or at least a pretty major plot, rolling in motion. Well, after that duel, Yuhi felt he did not want to use the high-tech dragon deck anymore because he felt that he was not a good enough duelist to use it. It's kind of how I feel when I look at Branded. I look at Branded and I'm like, yeah, you know what? I don't think I'm a good enough duelist to use this deck. I'm not quite there yet. And I feel like Yuhi kind of felt very similarly. And so Yuumu, who naturally, and they say it in this episode, and we already knew that, is the better duelist, gave Yuhi her joint tech deck, and she took on the high-tech dragon deck. And even Kawaitel noted that instantly Yuumu was better with the high-tech dragon deck. And it's not easy to switch decks, and it's not really an aspect that we've seen all that much in Yu-Gi-Oh! You know, we've seen our moments where characters will use another character's iconic monster. Jack Atlas with Stardust, Aki with Stardust. I don't know why I'm just thinking 5Ds, but we've seen it throughout the Yu-Gi-Oh! Shows. But to see full decks be swapped and switched is very rare. And unfortunately for Yuhi, as he's using this high-tech dragon deck accidentally, even though he does have some experience with it, Shubaha is using Buster Blader. And if you know anything about Buster Blader, it is the epitome of anti-dragon card, where it gains 500 attack for every dragon monster in the grave. Shubaha's very early on able to equip a spell to Buster Blader that allows it to be impenetrable from being destroyed by traps and spells. So literally all Yuhi can do is try to beat over Buster Blader. The problem is the other cards in Shubaha's deck really have good synergy with the effect of Buster Blader by dumping the opponent's deck into the graveyard. And so the more cards that are in your opponent's graveyard, the more dragon cards specifically, the more attack Buster Blader is going to get. And because it's impenetrable to spells and traps, Buster Blader becomes a really, really tough out here for Yuhi, and at one point reaches 11,100 attack, which is a new record. That is the most amount of attack points that we have ever seen in Yu-Gi-Oh! Go Rush, or Yu-Gi-Oh! 7s, or Rush Dueling Yu-Gi-Oh! At all. So that was a really cool kind of fun fact there. And I think I really like this duel because, one, I like Yuumu's deck, and two, I've used Buster Blader before. I've used that deck very, very early on when I started playing on Edo Pro in like 2016, 2017. So that's a deck that I do have some familiarity with. And anytime you see an OG ace get the respect that it deserves in Rush Duels, I think it's always the coolest thing ever. And the way that he's really able to out this monster and beat it is through our Red Eyes variant, and that's probably another reason why I love this duel so much, because I love Red Boot Boost Dragon, and Yuhi uses its effect 3 different times. Remember, a lot of Rush Duel monsters don't really have that once per turn effect. Red Boot does not, and Red Boot allows you to get 7 of your dragon-type monsters from your grave back into your deck, inflict damage to your opponent equal to 7, and gain 700 attack points. And Yuhi's able to do this 3 different times. At one point, Shubaha even uses a trap that gets cards back into Yuhi's graveyard, but because Yuhi had a really unique spell that allowed Red Boot to use its effect again, that was literally the effect of the spell, Red Boot's able to get its effect off 3 different times. Yuhi has arguably his best turn ever as a duelist in this show, and has probably his most impressive win using a deck that, sure, he has some familiarity with, but has not used in a very long time. And it's not like he was cleaning house with the Joint Tech deck. I mean, he had lost to Yugioh, he had lost to Yugioh, he had lost a couple of times even with a deck that in show canon, I guess, is supposed to be easier to use. So Yuhi getting a win with this deck in a really tough matchup against Buster Blader, I think really does a great job of symbolizing his continued growth as a duelist. But what do we say? Always room to improve. I believe that no matter what, you always have room to improve. And at the end of this episode, Yuhi gives his deck back to Yuumu and says, I want you to keep using this. I don't think I'm ready just yet. Always room to grow, and I love that. Yuhi gets a big win here, but he doesn't immediately just think, all right, I'm good, I'm awesome, this deck's mine again. Boom. Gives it back to his sister. Loved that for Yuhi. And then Yuhi basically saves Shubaha's life. We learn that Shubaha is a dragon buster, which is a species that can turn into swords and fly across the universe. I know it sounds goofy, but given the massive scope of this show and how important aliens are, it didn't really feel weird to me at all. It felt like just a different type of alien species, and they basically feed on space dragons. Now, the problem is space dragons are extinct, so the only way for them to continue to live is through space dragon fossils, which is also known as Goridonium, which is what they have been searching for. And, Shubaha also early on went into the mining that this planet went through, and the greed of people trying to get this very rare mineral, which is, very easily able to tie into a lot of the real world stuff that we've seen. I thought that was a pretty good thing. I'm not going to really talk about that in this review because I don't think I'm too big of an expert on the topic, but that's definitely a realistic thing that happens, right? People with money and resources go into an area, they mine it of their minerals or ores, and then they leave the area desolate and destroyed in some cases. So I thought that was a very realistic thing and a sad thing that does happen in our reality. And so without space dragon fossils, Shubaha is not able to live, and he's about to accept his fate as he walks away here, and he's going to die. He knows he's not going to have enough time to sustain his life any longer, and he pretty much hints at that this is the end for him until Yuhi comes over, makes a pinky promise with him, and Yuhi beats him in a duel and saves his life. He's a man of his word. He shows them where the Gorodonium is. He's not going to take it for himself. But Yuhi, if he didn't go over to Shubaha, I believe Shubaha's probably dead there. And so the implication of that is pretty heavy and insane, and it just goes to show you, I think, the overarching element of be kind to people, right? Be nice. You never know what someone is going through. And I know that's a little kind of generic and basic, but if Yuhi didn't go over there at the end of this duel, and it also speaks volumes to the kind of person Yuhi is. I don't think any of us ever doubted that he is a super caring individual and a super, he's just got such a big heart. And he makes a pinky promise to Shubaha that he wants to duel Shubaha again. And Shubaha says to Kawaii a little later on that he kind of found a new purpose, and I think he heavily hints at the impact that Yuhi had on him. And so he flies away, and he left a pretty big impact, I think, on me as a viewer. Way more than a lot of the one-off characters that we have seen in Yu-Gi-Oh! Go Rush. You compare him again to, like, Ashita Glot, and it's not even close. So, all in all, I really, really like this episode. Great episode for Yuhi. Dueling action was a lot of fun. And Shubaha was a lot more of an in-depth character than I expected him to be. So, ultimately, really happy with episode 42. We inch closer to getting to Velgears. We inch closer to what's going to be probably a crazy end to this first season. And I cannot wait. I am so excited. But guys, thank you so much for watching my Yu-Gi-Oh! Go Rush episode 42 review. Please let me know all your thoughts on this episode down below in the comments. As always, thank you so much for watching. A special thank you to my Platinum tier patron, Panther J, to my Diamond tier patrons, Latrell Smith and Jesse Woods, and to my Egyptian God tier patron, Pink Penguin. Thank you to everyone who supports me on Patreon and whoever is a YouTube channel member. You guys help me out so much. And if you want some exclusive channel perks, definitely check out both of those sites and features. Be sure to check out my channel for more Yu-Gi-Oh! Anime content. And until next time, I hope you have an amazing day. Take care, guys.
Wow.